These are 6 examples of fluids from Froggy's Fog. It's available online at several stores, and you can order from Amazon as well. Fog fluid is pretty much water, and you can take, for 97 cents, go to Walmart, buy a gallon of distilled water, run that through your fog machine. It will make steam, but it won't persist for very long. So you need some chemicals in there to give it the characteristics you want: thick fog, persistent fog, etc. And these choices, on the left is Velocity. Velocity is a very fast dissipating fog fluid. I use that in photo shoots where I don't want the studio to remain fogged up for very long, so I don't have little particles of fog showing up in the strobe lights. The haze fluid is great for laser swamps, where you do want a light amount of haze or fog to remain in the air for a long time. Swamp juice is a good general purpose fog fluid. It makes a good volume of fog, and it's what we'll be using to demonstrate the volume of the fog machines as well as the chiller. There is a freezing fog juice. It's intended for use with cold ground fog, and bog fog, which is a thicker fog, more voluminous. Backwood Bay gives you a good volume, but it also has a fairly long persistence at low levels, so it's good for giving you an atmosphere for your cemetery, something that will show up in the lights. You can also use it in a pinch for your laser swamp. These represent an assortment of common sizes and features of fog machines that use a water-based fog fluid. Some of the features are interchangeable, like the controllers. This machine is a 400 watt. It represents the wattage represents the amount of power it will draw out of the wall to run its heaters, which also generally indicates the amount of volume of fog it can put out. This is also a 400 watt. It was made to have a ice here, either wet ice or dry ice, to allow it to create a fog that will fall and drain off the water. It also has a different fog controller configuration manual and what we call a timer controller. The one in the middle is a 700 watt fog machine. It works the same as these, except it has a higher capacity heater in there and a slightly larger aluminum block, so it can throw out more fog at a higher volume before it has to stop reheating. This is supposed to be a 1200 watt, but it actually draws 1000 watts. Much cheaper just to advertise a higher number than it is to build a higher number. But this one has a feature of a variable output. The variable output on this allows, and some additional circuitry inside, allows it to put out a constant stream of fog without having to stop and reheat, as long as you don't exceed some level. This machine is supposed to be a 1700 watt. It draws 1400 watts, and it also is supposed to have the ability to put out continuously, but it doesn't have an output level and it can't keep up with its own output. So when you turn it on, it puts out full volume, shuts down, waits, and reheats. It has a DMX interface on it, as does this one. The DMX interface allows you to connect it to a computer and have your program or show operated by the computer, so it turns on the fog machine at a certain time, turns it off after a certain interval, etc. I needed to repair one of my machines and thought this would be a great opportunity to show you what a typical fog machine looks like inside. In this case, the tank to pump hose got brittle and will need to be replaced, but you don't have to stick around for that. 110 comes in from the wall. It's sent to resistance heaters that are mounted in an aluminum block. The block has a passage cut through it to help force the fluid into a spray. The block attains an operating temperature. A thermocouple will switch power from the heaters to this connector. This connector goes out, puts that 110 out to light the light, letting you know the machine is ready to operate. If you push this switch, it sends the 110 back into the pump itself, and it begins to pressurize fluid through this and force it through this passage, helping it to become vapor. If you have a timer controller, the same process works. There's just a little bit of circuitry in here that decides when it's going to push the button for you. Slightly elaborate or more expensive machines have additional circuitry that can monitor the temperature and either start the heater sooner before the block is completely reached its switchover temperature, or it can run the block and the pump simultaneously. There may also be circuitry in there for a DMX interface. It allows it to be the fog machine to be controlled by an external computer as part of your show. Turn the fog on, turn the fog off. If the fog machine has some lights, turn your lights on as well. Less elaborate machines, simpler and newer machines, have replaced this thermocouple with just a click switch on the block. The heaters will basically steal all the power from the unit while they're running. This click switch, when it gets to temperature, will open up, turning off the heaters, and the power then becomes available and your pump can be run. That's basically the internals. This is the 400 watt. A breeze today, but it's great for actually blowing out of props, or maybe a small room area, or maybe a little bit of ambience on the floor. This is the 400 watt, what they call low fogger or ground fogger. It has a hardwired manual control, so you have to hold the button while you want it to operate. Suitable for an enclosed space, and with some dry ice in the chamber, you could probably get the fog to lay at least a little bit on the ground. It doesn't have a great deal of time to cool the fog, and the cooler you get it, the more it will fall to the ground and stay there. A little bit of breeze. This is my favorite brand of fog machine. This is a 700 watt from Visual Effects International. The 1200 watt one is also from Visual Effects. I've had this one over 15 years. It's been an excellent performer. So 700 watt. Got a bit of wind today, but it gives you an idea of the output. This is a 1200 watt. The breeze has come up a little bit more, but still should get a pretty good idea. Well, there's quite a bit more breeze right at the moment, and I have to push this one by hand. So this is the 1700/1400 one, and have to put this one a little further back. Need to be able to see. Oops, sky shot. All right. Right at the moment, it stopped to reheat. Now you can see the value of having a machine that is able to run continuously. It doesn't have to stop and reheat the block before it can operate again. Okay. Great choice for outside when you want to fog an area up. You could use it intermittently to keep blowing a blast out periodically with the timer. It stopped. This is the smallest and probably one of the simplest. This is called the Tidy Cat chiller. And what I've done here to make it simple is I cut a 2-inch hole, heated it, and then just push this through. It gives a great seal. No glue, no screws. You galvanize basically chicken wire. It's about a 1/2-inch grid. Hold it in place. Drops in there to hold the ice out of the bottom. The bottom is set with an area that will hold 10 pounds of melted ice, the water for 10 pounds of melted ice. So it's self-contained. Once this melts, it won't have run out on the floor. Good for use inside. This is 2-piece with plastic ABS. These were about $2 a piece off of, I believe, Amazon. You can turn it around and use it this way if you want to put a pipe down in the fog machine there. I prefer the fog machine here. And you can still add fog without having to take everything apart. And these are best suited for small fog machines. I'll be demonstrating this a little bit later. It holds about 10 pounds of ice, and it's called the Tidy Cat, litter or litter box. You can do the same thing with a 5-gallon bucket, but these are free, and most people with a cat will be happy to give you one. This next one is the equivalent of a cooler chiller. I chose to make my own cooler by using two the common totes and putting a layer of expanding foam between them, thus creating my own double-walled box, because I had them and didn't want to purchase a cooler. Sometimes you find them out on the street where your neighbors have put them out for giveaways. This has, again, screen there to keep the ice from plugging up the outlet. Hot fog comes in, passes through the ice, and exits through the base. This is a 32-gallon plastic trash can I picked up from Lowe's. I believe it was around $13. Inside there is 4-inch diameter aluminum dryer hose, probably around 15-18 feet of it. I could add more, but I don't really need to. And a tomato cage inverted to add a form for it and allow the ice to go down the center and sides while it's held in position. The inlet is connected here, and the hot fog actually tends to rise as it begins to cool down from the ice. It becomes more dense and falls and spirals down to the outlet, and we'll demonstrate that effect. But I believe this holds up to about 80 pounds of ice. I typically use it around 40, maybe 60 pounds of ice depending on how long it's going to have to run and how often I'm going to be available to reload ice into it. It is best used outside unless you have a kiddie pool to catch the water, because as the ice melts, it will run out the bottom. Okay, fog machines ranging from 400 watts up to 1700, which actually does 1400, but and 3 different fog chillers and 80 pounds of ice. Let's have some fun. Well, this is a tidy cat chiller. It's made to hold about 10 pounds of ice and the water from the ice when it melts. Thank you. I try not to fall and break my butt. Fog exits the machine around 250 degrees, 260 degrees. So we're trying to cool it down. The more we can get the fog cooled below the ambient temperature, which today is 92 degrees, the more the fog will fall to the ground, heavier be, and the longer it should stay there. This is 400 watt machine. Right now, the air is measuring about 77 degrees out of there. Move this a little closer. And now we're going to open it. Setting on the ground. It's coming out at about 70 degrees. We'd like it to be cooler, but setting this down, I think I can do that. Turn that off. We're going to switch to 700 next. This is the 700 watt machine in the Tidy Cat chiller. The air temperature at the exhaust of the chiller right now is about 51 degrees, so the hot fog will be mixing with the air inside. Machine controllers. Manual one for this one. Fog flowing out now is about 63 degrees. And the chamber, the chiller is filling up with fog, so even when I stop the machine, it will continue to flow out as the rest of it cools down and flows through. But this gives you an idea of what you'd expect. Even when I stop the machine, stop the pump, fog will continue to run out of the chiller for a bit. Just because it's getting colder and flowing out. The fog machine is still off. Back on for a moment. So you can see that short intervals with a timer controller will do well for keeping ground fog going. And again, that's 10 pounds of ice in the Tidy Cat chiller. It's about 40 pounds of ice in there. You could probably get to 50, but I wouldn't go much over that. You need a little bit of room for the fog to be able to expand in there so it can go down through all of the channels available to it to the bottom. Put the outlet here, put the top on it. And this particular design has two tops. Tops are insulated, and I put a piece of plywood on top to provide a place to rest the fog machine, which I happen to prefer that configuration, putting the fog machine on top. Right now we're waiting for the fog machine to reheat. And let's see if I can get this in. Get a measurement of the outlet temperature. Again, you can see why the machines that are capable of running continuous are so valued. You don't have to stop and wait and hope nobody comes through your haunt, or your shot is ready when you have the inability. Okay, we're up and running. The flow temperature out of there is 63 degrees. At a 90-degree day, it should stay on the ground for a long time. Like the other one, it has a fair amount of fog in the chamber being cooled and will continue to flow out. The outlet temperature right now is 60 degrees. That's the 700 watt fogger on the cooler chiller with 40 pounds of ice in it. This is the 1200 water that roughly runs about 1,000 watts. It is sitting on a cooler chiller with approximately 40 pounds of ice in it. I'm going to turn the volume down initially out of the machine and show you. Yeah, I was going to show you. I'll turn it to This is set to run at a fairly low level, something on the order of this, similar to the 700 watt, maybe a little bit higher than that. The output duct is down to 57 degrees now, so this fog is going to stay very low on the floor. We have quite a bit of it. And that's a fairly good way to run it and keep a place fogged up nicely. The more you disturb fog, the more it mixes with the air and will rise off the floor, off the ground. You don't want that to happen. So keeping it smooth, putting a little bag on here, letting the fog creep out is even more effective than keeping it low to the ground. I'm turning up the volume on it a bit now. Temperature of the air coming out of the duct and the fog is 48 degrees. That's going to stay low to the ground for a long time, and that's what you want. Which is now beginning to filter up into the air. Most of it's just coming from leakage out of the top of the box where I haven't pushed it all the way down on the lid. The ground fog is staying very low to the ground. This is the 1200 with the trash can chiller and about 60 pounds of ice in it. You just kind of go nuts with it. Okay, we're running. And out of pours. Let's see what our temperature is. Let's see where our temperature is. Temperature is at 42 and falling, 39. The colder you can make the fog relative to the ambient air, the longer it will stay low. The more it will try to hug the ground, and the longer it will take to warm back up and start mixing with the air in the room. This is now coming out at about 34 degrees. That's how efficient this is at turning that ice into cold. Now, this can keep doing that till we can't see anymore. This is the 1700 watt, which again draws about 1400. and I'm going to let it blow through here pretty much full blast. So we're going to build a basin in here of fog. Because that doesn't have the ability to actually reheat, it's now, reheat and run continuously, it's now going to have to reheat. See, at that volume, or that speed going through there, it created so much disturbance with the fog, it mixed with the air. Now I've got air blowing in, I've got a thunderstorm coming in. The low volumes, you can see the fog is coming down through the tubes under its own weight now. A smaller volume of fog hits the ground, stays there, it's not disturbed. But when it's blown out at a high rate, if it has a lot of turbulence, it mixes with the air and cools the air, warms the fog, fog goes up into the air, and you're not really achieving the desired effect. So it's better in this case to run something like this in a series of short bursts. As soon as this continuously operating machine gets finished reheating, I will go ahead and cycle it in some short bursts to show you. You watch Rick's little green light over there. It's pretty disappointed in that machine. Yep, little green light's on because I walked away. All right, I'm going to run it and cycle it in short bursts to give you an idea of how much better it is if you're not throwing a lot of turbulence in the output. Poor little thing's got to stop and reheat. It's an American DJ fog storm. I would recommend you check out Chauvette's products or Visual Effects International. I've had some people argue with me on these about what side is the inlet and what side is the outlet. I say the inlet is the side where the tube runs up through the center and then begins to spiral down. So that as the fog chills and gets more dense, it naturally, gravity pulls it down under its own weight and helps it flow out of the machine rather than back into the inlet. Let's see that. Right now, I've got it set so the outlet is being used as the inlet. Let's see where the fog comes out. Doesn't seem like the most efficient system to me. Let's force that out of there and try it the other way. Let's see where this fog goes. Again, there's no ice in there. All the chilling that's happening right now is just the heat it gives off to the tubing inside, which makes it just a little more dense and allows gravity to pull it down. And here it comes. Although it might be a little hard for you to see. There we go. Check that out. Give the thing a chance. Blow fog in the right direction. Here's another cool tip. With the trash can chiller, if you've got plenty of room, don't want to use some ice, and a small fogger, or you want to run it at a low level, you can use a fan, or even just let the coils of it dissipate on their own without having to be in the trash can. You can run this aluminum foil out, and it will dissipate a lot of heat. There's no ice in the chiller. This is just the foil giving off the heat at a low level. By the way, some people say, as another tip, to blow air in there, back it up so you can throw air into your chiller with the fog. Well, that does kind of cool it down a little bit initially if you're not getting it cold enough. But what you're also doing is just taking outside air, drawing it in there, and using your ice up, trying to make that outside air cool. Notice the fog is falling out here, and it's dropping to the ground. It's just a few more degrees cooler than the ambient, but here's some ground fog. I'll just run for a moment or two. No ice, no water, no anything other than some aluminum tubing. How's that for pretty cool? Got some weather coming up, but I wanted to show you another trick. This is a rig. It's fairly inexpensive to get fog plumbed where you need it to go. If your area doesn't happen to have the wind going where you want it to, or you want to get it fog over a fairly wide area, this is a technique. And I'll be doing a couple of things. I'll be plugging the ends to direct it. I'll be showing what it looks like natively, and then I'll be showing you a trick for getting it further upfield. What I'm doing here is I'm wanting to get the fog to an area that's being affected by wind. So right now the plug is at the far end. I would like it to be at the close end because that's the way the wind is blowing now. That's the way to get the fog dispersed over a wide area. Again, I didn't have to take the second one, but I could have taken the second pipe and extended it and moved it from one side to the other, making it, instead of one on the left, one on the right, two on the left, or two on the right. And that would allow me to plumb the fog further upfield and have it come across the area I wanted to fog, or have it go through my graveyard if that's what I was using the fog machine for. It's raining now, so I'm going to stop. I'm going to try and show you a trick. I've got a lot of wind today, so it may not work. Notice the fog is taking off and blowing away. I mean, if there's wind, there's nothing you can do about saving the fog or having an effective fog display. You can have smoke coming out of a chimney, that's about it. Now, what this trick is I'm wetting the grass. And I'll tell you, it's a very simple trick. It works great for keeping ground fog in when there's not any wind. The reason this works is because the fog dissipates by evaporating. If you have saturated the air full of water, the air can't hold a lot more water, so it stays moist, muggy, and your fog lasts a lot longer. Again, not sure if I'm going to be able to do this with this much wind to show you. Yeah, it's kind of a nope. Thought I'd offer some tips as well. This was being repaired and showing basic insides of it. Well, I've since repaired it. This is a Teflon line. It's called PTFE is the material. And the reason I've used this, I've had this fog machine for more than 15 years. And in that time, 3 times I've had to replace this urethane kind of tubing. I'm not sure what it's made with. Reconstituted catfish whiskers, I suppose, because it disintegrates. Leaves a gum in the connector that you have to dig out, and of course the hose breaks at a very inconvenient time. So my tip is get this Teflon hose. They now sell it in various sizes very easily on eBay or Amazon, and replace it the first time you have to replace the hose in your fog machine with this material, and don't worry about it again. It's again a happy little machine. Harbor Freight painter's filters. Excellent for keeping things out of your fluid or getting things out of your fog fluid that have gotten into them. Funnel, filter, this is a fluid that's been sitting around for a while. Look what's in the bottom. Not a grand choice. There's still more in here. But the fluid that would be going into the fog machine, or from the fog machine back into the your container to store it until next year, doesn't have that issue. Here's a tip on storage of your fog machine. I specifically discussed with two manufacturers the best way to store fog machines in the off season, and both gave me the same answer. They said, pour the remaining fluid from the tank out. It's up to you where you want to pour it. Leave the fluid that is in the hose and the pump in place. To protect it, put it away. Their recommendation is every couple of months, take it out and use it. I kind of ignore that, but you know, I also use them occasionally anyway, but I don't, as a rule, make sure I take them all out and run them. The party fog, or the 700 watt, like I said, is well over 15 years old, and I've only had to replace the hose on it as it ages out. So it's good advice, and I take it. Another tip, sometimes the fog fluid will precipitate glycerin out in the form of threads or have some other benign looking material in it. Before you throw away that fog fluid, give this a try. Pour it a little slower, probably a useful thing. Sealed a little too well in the bottle. Take your fog fluid that's been stored for a while and has some weirdness floating around inside it, or even if it doesn't, it really costs you nothing. Take the fog fluid, shake it up, break up those strands. Let's see what we've got in our trusty Harbor Freight. It's going to be cloudy because I've got a ton of air in it. There's just a little bit, and if I continued shaking it, I would have gotten rid of the rest of that. This has got air in it. Give it a couple minutes, and the air will pass out, and this will be back clear. So if your fog fluid has a little bit of strands running around inside that doesn't look like grass or some other foreign object, give it a good shake. It's probably just some glycerin or other chemical precipitating out of it.